Same-sex couples do not have a legal right to get married in this country as of today. There was hope that this would change when a Supreme Court, five-judge Supreme Court bench delivered its verdict after months of hearings and deliberations. That bench, led by Chief Justice of India, Justice Chandrachud, did deliver its verdict today, and it was an interesting one. It will definitely be a landmark one, but it hasn't changed the situation on ground for people who were petitioning the top court in this case. People who said that we are officially in same-sex relationships. It is not illegal to be in a same-sex partnership. Why should it be illegal to get married and have the same rights as any other Indian citizen? So what is interesting is that 5 judges, 4 judgments, and a resounding agreement from the top court of this country that same-sex couples also should have the right to get married. In fact, 2 of those 5 judges also believe that they should have the right to adopt children even if they are not married. But at the end of the day, making this happen will require a change in law, possibly of the Special Marriage Act. And that has been left to Parliament because it is Parliament's right to make, change or adapt laws in the country. So that's where we stand as of today. What does that really mean for this community? What does it mean for rights of same-sex couples, of LGBTQ people, and their demand that they have the same rights as other citizens in this country? To speak more on this and to understand the aspects of this, I'm joined now by Ashutosh Srivastava. He's an advocate in the Supreme Court. He did not appear for the petitioners or the government, but he's been tracking this case very, very closely and largely so far arguing that the central government was right in saying it's not the Supreme Court's jurisdiction to make these laws. Deborah Gray-White is also with me. She's an LGBTQ activist and an equal rights activist. So welcome to both of you, and thank you for speaking with us, where we try and break down the implications of this. Deborah, let me begin. Is it, in your view, a landmark day where the needle has moved, or in real terms, nothing changes?
I say this being crushed under the burden of irony, but I feel stonewalled. Stonewall riots were perhaps one of the most memorable, historical events in the history of LGBT rights. But to be stonewalled also means that, you've hit a wall, you can't move forward. So when I first found that 5 judges, 4 verdicts, I was hoping at least one, if not 2, would be fully, wholeheartedly in support, giving us everything we want. But also, as a journalist who has covered this for more than a decade, I was expecting this. Let's be realistic, there are elections next year. And strictly from the legal point of view, when they say that they can't really do anything, it is disappointing. But I know where that is coming from. Then again, what happens to the community, especially to people who are out and proud and who want to enter a matrimonial relationship, people who have, I prefer to use the term marriage equality because same-sex seems to be a little restrictive for me. So marriage equality hasn't really happened because that equality is not available to everyone. I mean, the law says that as long as I'm a consenting adult, as a woman, if you're 18 and if as a man you're 21, you have the right to get married to whoever you want. Why is that courtesy still not being extended to people who are in non-heterosexual relationships? So yes, the discrimination continues. I understand the hurdles. I understand why all those 4 judgments couldn't really give us what we want. But yes, I do feel stonewalled. It's all entirely now up to the Parliament. And let's be honest, with the exception of maybe Shashi Tharoor and Mahua Moitra and maybe 5 other people in the Parliament, nobody really cares. So it is just...
I just want to understand what it means for you and for people in the community, Deborah, because all through this, and I'm not talking just about the legal argument, the social narrative was always like, you have the right to be together. It's been decriminalized. You can live together. Why do you want marriage rights? Why does that make a difference? So
So
What
here's my
is that feeling?
Tamara, here's my understanding. See, at the end of the day, we live in a very traditional society. And yes, of course, there are people who don't believe in the institution of marriage. There are people who are not religious, people who live together. And leaving them aside, there is a huge chunk of people within the LGBT community as well who are very traditional. They've been raised in the same culture as you and I, and they would want to solemnize their relationship in the presence of friends and family. They want the same respect as heterosexual couples. Marriage isn't just something you do for other people, you know. And I'm not talking about the whole show and the pomp and the ceremony. It's standing there in front of the people who mean something to you and declaring your love for someone who you want to spend the rest of your life with. And to be deprived of that right, it does pinch, it does hurt a lot of people.
Mr. Srivastav, let me bring you in here. What do we make at the end of this? Because, and I listened in to that entire judgment, and when it was being read out by all the judges, there was overwhelming support for the concept that people who identify themselves as, say, transgender, queer people, LGBTQ people, do have the same rights, should have the same rights. So they have endorsed the concept. They've stopped short of saying that from today or from tomorrow it is legal for you to marry. Isn't it a very clear cue for the government to follow?
See, the Supreme Court has got certain limitations so far as legislature is concerned. Legislature makes the laws and the executives execute it, and judiciary just hears if there is any interpretation of law required, as it happened in this case. See, the petitions were filed basically, having the interpretation of the provisions of the Special Marriage Act. Now, the Special Marriage Act in India was framed, for the purpose of having inter-religious marriages or maybe inter-caste marriages. But in that act also, there is no provision of, same-sex marriages. So that was something that should be included or maybe interpreted, because if under Article 21, if the citizens of this country have the liberties, they have their own way of living, their rights, so why not it should also be considered in the Special Marriage Act? Now, when the petitions were heard, a lot of interpretations were made and other laws were also referred in this. There are many personal laws like, Hindu Marriage Act, there are, there is a Muslim personal laws, but this particular Special Marriage Act was framed for a different purpose. So they wanted that this should also be included. But in this particular act, there is no provision as such specifically mentioning about, same-sex marriage. And accordingly, Supreme Court also found out that there are other new laws which would be required to be made, and that should be represented by the member of parliament, because India is a democratic country.
Sure.
And as per being the largest democracy, let the representatives of the people decide
of course, it comes.
What is good for them.
So as I understand, Mr. Srivastav, and just explain this to us, because there was a mention of unions as opposed to marriages. And that was one sort of middle path that was being talked about, that why can this not be a civil union? Explain to us the legal hiccup there. Has there been any clarity from the courts today on this? That if you don't want to call it a marriage, can you have a civil union? At the end of the day, the problem for same-sex couples isn't just about the ceremony, as Deborah has explained. The problem is if one wants to allow their partner to inherit their property, mention them in their will, buy a house together, take a loan together, etc. All the other things that other couples can do.
Yes, see, the union, the social union of two, people, whether they are of the same sex or maybe they are hetero, sexual relationship, that has been recognized by the law and also by the Supreme Court.
Under which section? Does this come under Special Marriage Act? Where is this recognized?
No. See, when you talk about any marriage act, then the marriage is the basic principle here. See, now if we see the live-in relationship, that is also recognized in our country, because see, there is no specific law allowing it or disallowing it at the same
Mr.
time.
Srivastava, I'll just like to differ here, because
Yes.
this is something that the Chief Justice clarified. Live-in relationship finds a mention in the law only in the context of the Domestic Violence Act. That if there is perpetration of domestic violence against a live-in partner, it will still come under the Domestic Violence Act, even if they're not married. That is the start and finish of live-in relationships as per the law. I'm not talking about societal norms. So where does civil union come in?
See this, when the matter had come up in in 2018, that particularly section 377, which made it a criminal offense to have intercourse with the same gender, and this was partially struck down by the Supreme Court, considering these aspects only. But see, there are two aspects of it. One is to live with the same sex partner and to have the physical relationship. This is one part of it. Now the other part of it is the marriage. Now the first part, as I said, is not barred by the law. That was only barred by section 377, which we used to make it criminal offense. That has been removed. So there is no any further bar by any law as such that two
You're not
same-sex
answering my
couples
question.
cannot
I'm
stay.
asking about this
Yes.
point about a civil union. Does it exist in law today? Is there any provision for it?
I'm just explaining that only. See,
Right.
in the law, there is no bar to have same gender staying together and having any sort of relationship. That is not barred. What is barred here is the marriage. See, marriage is not only in this in this context. Even in the Hindu Marriage Act or any personal law, there are certain relationships also which are barred. Like there cannot be any marriage between with a cousin brother or a cousin sister. There are a lot of bars. The law has defined.
Okay.
So what I am speaking here is, see, the one law could be to allow it in a proper manner. The other would be whether it debars you or not. When there is no law which
right.
can bar you. Yes.
The idea over here is not what you're not allowed to do. It's about what you can be allowed to do. I'm putting it very simply because we should not confuse our viewers in legalese. Deborah, you wanted to come in. At the end of the day, is the civil union option still there, or has that now disappeared inside this now wait that a committee will come in, they'll decide whether you want to amend the Special Marriage Act. It all comes under the aegis of the Special Marriage Act, right?
Exactly, and this has become such an unnecessary gray area, because let us please understand there's a lot more to a marriage than just being, a bureaucratic exercise that is designed to create and perpetuate property rights. There's a lot more to it than financial rights or medical legal rights. Those are important, and that is one of the reasons why we went to court. Of course, all those things are important, but at the end of the day, all these 4 judgments are telling me is that I don't have the same respect that everybody else in this country does. And that hurts. If I can't call my girlfriend my wife, or if a man who's in a homosexual relationship can't call his partner his husband, then that takes away something from us. It is a matter of dignity. It is a matter of treating everyone with the same amount of respect. And just the glaring absence of respect, which is what hurts the most. And of course, yes, all these laws being placed in limbo, that the committee will be formed and then maybe the parliament will change the laws. And as I said before, in the parliament, leaving aside 5 people, we know nobody cares. So all I'm taking away today from all these 4 judgments is, I don't matter, nobody cares. And that's it.
I wish you wouldn't feel like that, Deborah. I really wish you wouldn't feel like that. Though I see where you're coming from. Think about it this way. Isn't it unfair if someone doesn't have the same rights as you to get married, have children, put something in their loved one's name only because of how they choose to live their life or what they choose to do in the privacy of their bedroom? Mr. Ashutosh, just your point on this. Is this the end of the line, or is this the beginning of the story? Because one thing to take heart with, just let me complete, please, sir. One thing to take heart from, and Deborah, you should too. You should too. As dismal as you feel today, you should take heart from this, is that there was an overwhelming resonance from the highest bench of the highest court in this country that this is not anything wrong, it's not restricted to the urban elite, there is no law or there's no data to show that heterosexual couples will make better parents than same-sex couples. None of that has been proven. The court has underscored the rights. It's just up to the lawmakers to actually legislate because that's their job. Ashutosh, what would you say to this? Isn't it time, and that's what I started with, isn't it time to take cue from what the highest court in this land has said? And just to explain to us, since this is on the concurrent list, is it within the ambit of state governments to formulate their own law if they wish to?
So see, when the matter was heard in the Supreme Court, and when the Supreme Court came to a conclusion today, see, first of all, Supreme Court is not saying that we are against it. It has not mentioned that way. The Supreme Court only said that since it is about framing of a new law, let the law be prepared by the Parliament, which has the rights and powers as per the Constitution. We can only interpret the laws. And the Supreme Court has said that a committee to be formed, and this committee should take note of all the legal issues and the problems being faced by the community, and all these issues to be raised in the Parliament, and accordingly, a proper law should be framed. Now, there was the other part of it that, the community is being unnecessarily, attacked, or many a times they suffer through violence, and all these things are, making them suffer. So to which the Supreme Court has made so many of directions given to the central government, state government, and the union territories, that this community should be given all the dignity,
yes. Are the states and the central government legally bound to take these directions? Because the directions for the police as well. Are they legally bound to take these directions, and will there be penalties and contempt if they do not follow them?
Yes, okay. This is what the Supreme Court has said. It has given directions to the police also. Yeah. Earlier, whenever the community, if two of the people, they go out and then the parent or the family member, they used to go and file a complaint or maybe register FIR, then the police used to unnecessarily harass. So now the Supreme Court says if they are going on their own will, on their consent, they have all the liberties. This is what I was explaining earlier. So they have the liberties to be together and nobody can stop them. And this is what has been, held by the Supreme Court today, that the respect and dignity should be given to them, even when, the Supreme Court is recommending for the formation of a committee which should address this issue, for the, as about the legalities like passports, ration card, like bank account, adoption, so many other issues. But so far as the marriage is concerned, that also the Supreme Court has not said that it is, something which cannot be decided even by the Parliament. It is unethical, it is unlawful.
No, they backed it. They've backed it. The question though is about what happens today. So for example, now Deborah has to wait till this committee happens, until the law comes in to live her life. So there is legalese, and then there is real life and real people. And the question about whether all Indian citizens have the same rights today. So definitely deep questions over here. Some optimism in the language of the Supreme Court. The ball is now in the court of our parliamentarians. And we'll have to wait and see if they will be seized of this issue. I will have to end it here, but I want to thank both of you for joining us and just throwing some light on the import and the importance of what we've seen today. Thank you.